Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Continuing with the Quran tafsir series, tonight we're going to discuss the verse 154 of Surat al Baqarah, chapter 2, which is about those who are killed in the way of Allah Azza wa Jal, and that they are alive while we do not perceive it. As it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. And do not say about those who are killed in the way of Allah, they are dead. Rather, they are alive, but you do not perceive it. We want to discuss this verse in various contexts and answer the following questions from the Quranic perspective. Number one, does man survive after death? If they survive, then where do they go and what does it look like? Number three, is it possible to contact those who are dead, and what do scriptures say about these things? Then the subsequent questions which we will answer. There is another verse similar to verse 154, which is in Surat Al Imran, chapter 3, verse 169, where it says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. And never think of those who have been killed in the cause of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive with their Lord, receiving provision. We will discuss this verse as well. Before anything, we must keep in mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also said in the Quran, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every person will taste death. Where death here means death in this life, as in end of this life, for our physical body as it dies and separates from our soul, while our souls do not die. How do we then reconcile this verse with verses 154 in Baqarah or 169 in Al Imran, as they say, those killed in the way of Allah are not dead? One verse says people die, but the other two verses say they are alive. Being both alive and dead at the same time is impossible. The answer is every person dies, even those who are killed in the way of Allah. However, life goes on in another world right after this life. This life goes on and ends with death. Meaning, they can go on in another world, or the life, what we call barzakh, behind the barrier, the life beyond that is separated with this life with a barrier. Barzakh world has been defined as an intermediary stage between this life and another life in the hereafter, an interval or a break between individual death and resurrection. Now, the apparent meaning for both verses 154 and 169 assert that only those who are killed in the way of Allah are alive in the next world, not every person. However, that is not the case. The Quran continues with its spiritual mobilization of the pioneering Muslim community of Medina in those verses, as they were revealed in the context of those who were killed, the martyrs, in battles such as Badr and Uhud, telling people who were grieving, saying they're gone, they are dead. Indeed, they are not. These verses are saying never think or say they are dead. They are alive, and while verse 154 says you do not perceive it, in verse 169 says they are receiving provision from their Lord. It's just that you people of this world cannot perceive it. It does not say other people who die naturally or those who did not die in the way of Allah do not go to the world beyond, or they disappear in nothingness. It is in response to the grieving and their statement of calling the martyrs dead. The Quran responds, no, they're not dead, but rather are alive in a different world, receiving provision from their Lord. But you cannot see or understand that world, which refers to a life and a world unlike what we experience here. Otherwise, we would have seen them or recognized them, that they are alive and living. In essence, these verses are saying those who die for the cause of God should not be missed or grieved over by their relatives, friends, and loved ones. There's no real sense of loss in their death, since they continue to live, enjoying the hospitality of their Lord, relishing His company and boundless rewards. It is a fact that life or living is something all living beings experience, in a sense that they are aware of themselves, aware of their surroundings, they eat and consume from the nature, and anyway enjoy the physical life in this world. By the same definition, we can say those who leave this world and go to the next world must have self-awareness. They know they are there and living there, because if the self-awareness does not exist, life and death become the same. A piece of rock has no life, has no self-awareness, nor awareness of its surroundings. Self-awareness is the minimum. That is, if they are alive there, then they are aware of themselves, and if their lives include other things, we could not perceive any of it from this world. The question then becomes, what does this immediate life after death look like? There is another verse which follows verse 3169 in Ali Imran, in which it describes the condition of those who were martyred and those who follow or join them later. As it says, they rejoice in what Allah has bestowed upon them of His bounty, and also they rejoice for the sake of those who will come after them, who have not yet joined them. Verse 170, which tells us people will know each other in that world. But how do they know each other? Their bodies are buried under the ground here in this world, as they died in a war or otherwise. It is said they know each other with a body befitting that world. In reality, we have three bodies. One fit for this life, another one fitting the next immediate life of barzakh, and the third which is befitting of the everlasting life in hereafter, body of akhirah. The body of the next immediate life has been defined as a delicate jism, body, that has the same appearance of the body in this life before death. Is there a reference in the Quran about this? There are a couple of verses about when the angels take disbelievers' souls at death, they strike their faces and their backs. This means they do have some form or shape of a body that has front and back. Obviously, the angels are not striking this body in this life, because this body is dead, fallen on the ground, and no sign of strike on it. In any case, it appears the barzakh body has some delicate mass with front and back resembling the body of this life. Of course, there are Muslims who do not believe in barzakh life, the next intermediate life, as they interpret verse 154 by saying, well, when the verse says, do not say about those who are killed in the way of Allah that they are dead, does not mean they are alive. It means their names are alive, and go on. However, this does not explain why the verse at the end says, وَلَكِنْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ, but you do not perceive. There have been many martyrs in Islamic history, shuhada, who are famous, and their names have remained, live on, and we have always understood and recognized their sacrifices. Hence, when the verse says you do not perceive or understand, obviously we do perceive and understand them, so that is not what the verse is referring to. The Prophet's companion Anas ibn Malik reports that the Prophet said, "No one enters paradise and wishes to return to worldly life, even if he was given everything on earth, except a martyr, shuhada. He wishes to return to life and be killed in the cause of God 10 times over for the honor and privilege he receives." Related by Malik, Bukhari and Muslim. But who are the living martyrs? They are those killed in God's cause and in God's cause alone. It is they who lay down their lives in defense of God's universal truth rather than in the name of a king, nation, or military honor. Then there are the materialists who say this body is all there is, and all feelings, awareness, and anything attributed to the soul come from this physical body, and once the body dies and decomposes, then all things disappear as well. And that is the end of existence for the person who dies. However, they have not paid attention to a very fundamental point, which life after death is no longer limited to philosophical and intellectual discussion. We now see that experimental science has proven there are signs that soul separates from the body, and many similar observations after the soul separation from the body. Nowadays, afterlife and near death is not only discussed in the holy books, but also has been discussed in scientific forums. There are now tens of books written about those who had near-death or out-of-body experiences. According to a recent article in New York Times published in 2025, among many scientists, the British neuropsychiatrist Dr. Peter Fenwick, an expert on near-death experiences, appeared in the BBC documentary called Glimpses of Death to comment on the near-death visions of people who had briefly died or nearly died and then came back to life. After it aired many years ago, thousands of people wrote him letters describing similar stories. Dr. Fenwick sent them a lengthy questionnaire to categorize their accounts. He presented his findings in his book, The Truth in the Light, an investigation of over 300 near-death experiences, which was published, I think, in 1995. Fenwick's interest in near-death experiences was piqued when he read Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. And of course, initially skeptical of Moody's experience, Fenwick reassessed his opinion after a discussion with one of his own patients who described a near-death experience very similar to that of Moody's subjects. Since then, he collected and analyzed more than 300 examples of near-death experiences from people, most of whom were not even religious. Fenwick argues that human consciousness may be more than just a function of the brain, as the materialists claim. As he said, that the plain fact is that none of us understands these phenomena. Fenwick and his wife are co-authors of The Art of Dying, a study of the spiritual needs of near-death patients. Before Fenwick, after decades of research on people and their near-death experiences, Dr. Raymond Moody, along with his friend Paul Perry, in their book called Proof of Life After Death, a groundbreaking book that combines nearly 50 years of afterlife and near-death experience research on people providing proof of the existence of the soul and life after death, in which they offer the answer to humanity's most pressing question: what happens when we die? Moody and co-author Paul Perry reveal that consciousness survives after the death of the body, featuring in-depth case studies, the latest research, and eye-opening interviews with experts. Researchers have shown those who were momentarily clinically dead had out-of-body experiences as they observed themselves lying on the bed. Those in the hospital could see from above doctors and nurses working on their body, then returning to their body, all having similar experiences. Not to mention all other experiences in common with all subjects, and the fact some of these people's lives changed dramatically after their out-of-body or near-death experiences. This subject is not coincidental nor is imagination. Hence, the materialists can no longer say there are no scientific evidence. As for their claim there is no soul to begin with, that is another topic which we have discussed extensively in various lectures, but it suffices to say the physical body cannot function without the soul. The materialists say when part of a body ceases to function, it's because something went wrong with it, and that is the only reason. And had soul existed, it could not work without that part of the body that is broken. So it all ends up with the function of the physical body. If in a body eyes, for example, go blind due to some illness, that is the end of it, and soul has no role in it. The answer is, if eyes go blind, the soul in a body still exists and functions. It's just that the soul cannot see physical things anymore because it sees by using the eyes. However, all other functions still exist, as well as the soul itself. Let's offer a simple analogy to clarify the body and soul and their relationship to each other against materialists' claim. Imagine you have a portable radio or TV sitting on your desk, by which you are listening to your favorite radio station. However, if suddenly the battery runs out or something goes wrong with it, where you can no longer listen to it, you say, there's something wrong with it, or I need to fix it or replace the battery. At the same time, the radio wave from the broadcast station, broadcast tower, is still floating all around you, in your living room or the yard, the street, or the city, your program still being transmitted. It's just that your radio receiver cannot receive it because the battery ran out or something went wrong with it. Once you fix it, you will receive your favorite program again. Now, what if something goes wrong with the transmitter, the broadcast tower? Let's say it gets destroyed. What will happen to your program? There's nothing wrong with your radio receiver. It can perfectly receive radio waves and convert them to sound, yet you will not be able to listen to your program because there is no radio wave for it to capture and convert. The broadcast tower is down or out. In this case, you might as well dispose your radio because it is useless. There's nothing wrong with it, but it cannot function without the external radio waves around it. There's nothing for it to capture. Same example can be given about the relationship between the electricity and light. Without electricity, the light bulb is useless. The relationship between the soul and the body is like the relationship between the radio wave to the radio receiver. Without the soul, the body cannot function or be aware of itself and its surrounding, much like the radio wave is to radio, without which the radio receiver is useless. That is why we often see someone who is in perfect health, perfect shape, yet drops and dies, and they can't figure out why. The reason is it was time for his soul to leave his body, as in his death came. And without the soul, the body is useless, dead. So in the materialist example, if we go back to it, if some disease causing someone to go blind, he does not lose his soul, but the soul can no longer see physical things because the soul uses sensors in the body to see, hear, and feel. The sensors such as eye, ear, nose, skin, etc. In addition to the aforementioned near-death or out-of-body experiences observed by physical and experimental scientists, we have talked about other aspects proving existence of the soul in other lectures you can refer to. And of course, there are multiple verses in the Quran pointing to this fact. For example, حتى إذا جاء أحدهم الموت قال رب ارجعوني. Until when death comes to one of them, he says, my Lord, send me back to life, this life. Who is saying, my Lord, send me back to life? If it is his body, it is buried in the ground and cannot talk. Therefore, it is the soul, which is the reality of a person who is gone to a different world and requesting to return to this life. In another verse in Surat al says, Allah takes the souls of at the time of their death, and those that do not die, he takes their soul during their sleep. Then it says he keeps those for whom he has decreed death and releases the others for a specified term. He keeps the soul of those whose time has come to die. Who is Allah keeping? The person's body has fallen on the ground and about to be buried. What is Allah keeping then? It is the soul, ruh. The verse then says, he releases the others, means their time of death has not come yet. So they wake up and live on. Back to different worlds, there are some Muslims who say, when in resurrection day people are asked how long they were alive, they will say a day or part of a day. يوما أو بعض يوم. Therefore, they claim there's no room for barzakh, the intermediate life, in half a day or a day. Hence, it does not exist. This is not a logical reasoning either, because we know the companions of the cave, Kahf, were unconscious for 309 years, and when they woke up, they too felt and thought they were gone for a day or part of a day, while their body had not even decomposed. Therefore, time in different worlds is different. According to the Quran, and much, much later by Einstein, time is relative, not absolute. You may go to sleep now, and your dream takes you over several years, feeling you have lived and experienced several years, only to wake up and realize you were asleep only for a few hours. Or the opposite, you could sleep for several hours, half a day, and wake up feeling you slept only for 5 minutes. Similar experiences with those who go unconscious. Those verses about resurrection, qiyamah, want to say time is relative to your feel and perception. Hence, the day of judgment, qiyamah, is near. Not that the intermediate or transitional world, barzakh, does not exist. Back to verse 154. Of course, due to the fact the soul is transferred to another world, that is the reason the verse says it is beyond our perception. However, as discussed in verse 3169, which is slightly different, it says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. And never think of those who have been killed in the way of Allah as dead. Rather, they are alive and their Lord, with their Lord, they're alive with their Lord, receiving provision. This verse and few verses before and after were revealed in the context of Battle of Uhud, and it is very similar to verse 154, or complements it, where instead of saying they are alive in a place you cannot perceive, this verse says they are alive with their Lord, receiving provision. So the explanation we offered for martyrs, shuhada, earlier goes for both verses 154 and 169. What does عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ, with their Lord, mean? Allah is present everywhere. Are martyrs, shuhada, present everywhere because they are with Him? Of course not. This is the Quranic style of expression. When the Quran says, for example, مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدُ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. Whatever you have will end, perish. But that which is with Allah endures, lasts. In Surat Nahl. It means that that which is with Allah, in Allah, is the world of being close to Allah. That which you do for His sake and His reward in order to be closer to Him. In other words, the word عِنْدَ, with, in verse 169, and this verse refer to rank or status, not location. Hence, in the law, with Allah or with their Lord refers to their high status or rank, not their location. So the verse says they have high status with Allah as they receive provision from Him. Provision in any world is proportional to it. They do not eat the same thing we eat here, for example. The next verse, 3170, describes their situation in that world. فَرَحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ وَيَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. They rejoice in what Allah has bestowed upon them of His bounty, and they rejoice for the sake of those who will come after them who have not yet joined them. Not only they are happy and pleased with what Allah has provided them, but also rejoice for those who have not joined them yet. The term yastabshirun means they are happy, they rejoice, not having glad tidings, as some have translated, for which the term would have been yabshirun, not yastabshirun. An analogy to this situation would be, let's say you and a group of people decided to go on a journey of climbing a mountain, a high mountain, where you and few others got ahead and got there first, and realize how beautiful the top of this mountain is, while resting and enjoying your time with the view, the waterfalls, etc. Not only you are happy and enjoying your time, but also you are happy for those who are coming behind you, and you say, wait till so and so folks get up here and enjoy the beauty. They rejoice in what Allah has bestowed upon them of His bounty, and they rejoice for the sake of those who will come after them, who have not joined them yet. Thus, the shuhada, martyrs, who got killed for the sake of Allah, have such situation. Some people cite this verse and have taken the word yastabshirun as glad tiding, good news, to those who live in this world. Hence conclude, those who left this world have contact or connection to this world. And that is not the case, absolutely not. Those gone cannot contact those who are behind. By those who have not joined them yet, the verse is saying each group has their own company. Martyrs join with martyrs. Good doers join the good doers. Disbelievers join other disbelievers, and so on. In other words, unlike this life, this world, the next world does not mix all groups together. Verse 3170 ends with what the first group and those behind them can look forward to. Allah khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. That they will not have fear, nor will they grieve. Again, this is about the next world where they will not grieve about the past, nor are afraid about the future. The next verse, 171, double confirms and then generalizes. يَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِنِعْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَفَضْلٍ وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. They rejoice because of favor and bounty from Allah, and of the fact that Allah does not allow the reward of believers to be lost. Notice, the verse ends with believers, not martyrs, shuhada. Meaning, Allah will reward the believers, not just the martyrs. Now, some Muslims want to misinterpret these verses to say the martyrs are alive here in this world. Let's contact them. They ignore the term عند Allah, with Allah, which is different than عندكم, with you, as discussed with verse 1696. ما عندكم ينفد وما عند الله باق. Whatever you have, whatever is with you will end, but that which is with Allah endures, lasts. You cannot combine these. These are two different worlds, completely separate worlds. Some people say we do seance, which is to attempt to make contact with the dead, sometimes through the agency of a medium or directly. Seance is forbidden in Islam as well as earlier religions. In the Bible, God talks about son of Hinnom in 2 Chronicles, who practiced soothsaying, used witchcraft and sorcery, and consulted mediums and called on spirits. Then says, he did much evil in the sight of the Lord and provoked His anger. And the Quran, along with many ahadith narrations, such acts have been forbidden as well. In the Quran, Allah indicates that He holds the soul, spirit, or the ruh, and they have no way to return to this world. فَيُمْسِكُ الَّتِي غَضَى عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَوْتِ. He keeps, withholds the soul upon which He has decreed death. He has not let them return and roam this world. There are seances that claim they have contacted the spirits or documented observations. But then that may in fact be contacting the jinns, as we believe there are other forms of creation in existence, one of whom are jinns, the hidden beings, whom the Quran has talked about and a chapter named after them. The point is, contacting spirit is nothing but a figment of imagination. The soul or spirit, ruh, has no means to get back to this world, as they no longer belong to this world. As such, they're not a plaything that you and I can recall or invoke anytime we have an inclination to do so, especially those of the prophets and their close companions, etc. They are not under our control to be summoned at will. What may be observed or experienced are jinns, who are beings confirmed by the scriptures as well as human experiences. So they exist, however, they are those who are bent to abuse this fact, like they think in every dark room there is a jinn, or when anyone who has an illness or possessed by jinn, which there may be in fact a very good medical or psychological explanation. Not every illness is caused by jinn or possession. We do acknowledge with certainty there exists jinn. However, we do not attribute every odd event to their presence or actions. At the same time, one cannot reject their existence and reality just because few so-called intellectuals do not believe in it, because they cannot touch them or feel them. As my teacher used to say, God has placed few orifices in our head by which we see, hear, and smell, and by which we connect to our universe. Had He given us few more, we would have seen and understood much more. Often we think we know everything about this universe. Hence, just because we cannot see, hear, feel, or perceive something does not mean it does not exist. At the end, these verses show what a Muslim's perception of the universe should be, what takes place in it, as well as life in various stages, where death is not the end of all life, as other people believe. With death, another chapter in one's life begins. According to verses 2:154 and 3:169 through 171, which we recited, the noble Quran has explicitly said the shuhada, martyrs, are alive and Allah will reward them as well as the mu'mineen. They are in a spiritual world, not here, where they live and receive provision. By the same token, according to scriptures, including the Quran, they cannot be recalled or invoked to return to this world, as in seance. Of course, there are verses about other categories of people, like the wrongdoers or disbelievers, and what happens to them after death, whom we can discuss when we come across relevant verses in the Quran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.